Let's take that really simple distress watercolor stamping technique to the next level a few different ways. I'm going to show you how easy it is, so let's get into it. Using the distress watercolor pencils to stamp with is probably my new favorite technique. But when I used them on the large sentiments, I felt like something was missing. So I'm going to show you how easy it was to add just a little something more to these sentiments. I am taking a variety of watercolor pencils from the 3 different packs so that I can create a rainbow effect on the stamp. I am going to be dipping the watercolor pencils into some water, and this paintbrush cup I got off of Amazon, and as you can see, it is very well loved. I'm scribbling some of the pigment in the cup, and I will dip the pencil back into the pigment when I need more. These pencils give off so much pigment, and a little bit goes a long way. And adding the color to the stamp is very easy, but I did notice when I pounced the pencil onto the stamp, I would get much more pigment onto the stamp. And this is going to help get a very vibrant stamped image. The colors I'm using are Fired Brick for the red, Wild Honey for the orange, Fossilized Amber and Mustard Seed for the yellow, Twisted Citron for the green, Prize Ribbon for the blue, and Seedless Preserves for the purple. And I did add a little bit of Picked Raspberry for some pink. I did have to add a little bit more red to the bottom of the stamp, and that's because I didn't plan out my sections good enough. Now that my stamp is covered with color, and I'm not going to lie, it did take quite some time, I'm going to spritz it with a little bit of water, and I'm going to be using some Distress Heavystock, and I spritz the cardstock with a little bit of water as well. I'm using my MISTI to stamp with so that I can get a good impression, and I'm also using my Stampendable tool to get even pressure. And here is that beautiful rainbow. I am going to cover the top and the bottom colors, and I take a wet paintbrush and I'm splattering on the color in rainbow order. This is going to give my card that mixed media look I love, and no project of mine is complete without some splatters. This is such an easy way to take that simple stamping technique to the next level. Once I'm done adding all of my splatters, I'm going to very carefully clean that stamp with a wet paper towel. Once the stamp is clean, I'm going to be adding some Versamark ink to it, and I'm going to be stamping it right over top of the first stamped image. This is why it's important to use some sort of stamp positioner tool. Now that I stamped with Versamark ink, I'm going to take it to the next level with some Distress Frosted Crystal. I'm going to sprinkle it over the top of the stamp sentiment, and Frosted Crystal has to be the most underrated supply in my craft room. It brightens up the colors while adding so much texture. Now I'm going to use my heat tool to melt it, and the best way to describe Frosted Crystal is it's like textured embossing powder. If you haven't tried it, I highly suggest that you grab some. I added some color to another stamp using the watercolor pencils, and I spritzed the paper and stamp with a little bit of water, and I ended up stamping the sentiment twice. As I opened the MISTI, I noticed that the sentiment looked like a muddled mess. And in my attempt to fix it, I accidentally discovered another way you can level up this simple stamping technique. And although this took a long time, I really love the results. I am taking the Black Soot watercolor pencil and adding it to the outside of the letters, trying my best to get as close to the edge as possible. I'm going to spritz the stamp with just a little bit of water, and using my Stampendable tool, I'm going to make sure I get a good impression. I dry this completely and stamp the sentiment again with Versamark ink. Now I sprinkle on the Frosted Crystal, and as you could see, the sentiment is a little bit more defined. But there's also those really cool areas where the color wicked out, which is really nice. Now I'm using my heat tool to melt that powder. I am going to assemble both cards the same. I add the stamped panel to a 3D embossed background with some foam tape to add some dimension. Stamping with the watercolor pencils is definitely my favorite technique, but that's just scratching the surface. In this video right here, you can discover so many more techniques and tips I have using the Distress watercolor pencils. I'll see you there.